Now for this class, we're going to take another light year jump, gigantic jump in Illustrator as I show you two very, very important panels, okay? The appearance panel and the effects panel. Now the effects panel I really don't use that much, but the appearance panel is absolutely key, okay? And I want to introduce them together because I use them together all the time. When I use the effects panel, I use it as part of the appearance panel. Here's the appearance panel right here, okay? All you do is go up to Window and get Appearance, or you can do Shift F6 and it'll appear, okay? And what I'm going to do is just draw a simple shape, a circle, okay? Here we go, circle. And if you'll notice over here on the appearance panel, you'll see that it says Path, Stroke, Fill, Opacity. Whatever is selected is showing up here on the appearance panel. It's telling you about the appearance of this object. So if I change this to a pinkish color, it's going to change over here, okay, as long as that's selected. If I alt click and bring this over here and let's say make this a blue, and now I click on this, now we're looking at all the different parts of this object, okay? So this object's selected and you see it here. Okay, let's get rid of that. Now, one of the really, really cool things about the appearance panel is you can create all sorts of effects to this object that are editable, and you can go back and change them whenever you want, and that includes effects. So let me give you an example. Okay, we have fills. I'm going to change the color of the fill. I'm going to put a stroke here. I'm going to just put a, actually I'm going to do that over here. I'm going to make a green stroke. Oops, that didn't work. Here we go, I got a stroke, green stroke. I'm going to make that big. Let's do 10. All right, so now we have a green stroke that's at 10 and a fill that's this red color. Now we can go into the stroke. I'm going to click on the stroke and we can start changing the properties. For example, you can see that it's right on the line here. Now we can change that so again it's inside, it's outside. You can change it to dashed lines. You can change how the dashed lines are. I'm not going to go in depth on this, but you know, I just don't want you to be afraid when you see that. You can change how the dashes are. They're not uniform like that, okay? But I'm just going to get rid of the dashed lines for now. Oops. Remember, you always have to be on the object, selected on the object to have things happen to it. Okay. And now one of the really cool things about this is you can add more strokes to it or more fills to it. So I can add another stroke on top of the stroke, and let's change the color of that one to, I'll just change it to orange, and you can add a new stroke, and you can do that inside, outside, just sitting on top of the other one. And that's a way to, you know, add a lot of functionality to a shape pretty quickly, okay? Or you could just make that white if you wanted to. And, you know, it's all just a way to combine things together and create new things. Now the leap and bound we're going to take with this is adding effects to the appearance panel, okay? So let's go up. I really don't use effects that much. And when I do, I typically, the warp is the one that I use a lot. And the warp basically just takes a shape and warps it in a variety of different ways, okay? So let's select on this guy and let's do Effect, Warp, Arc. Okay, now when this panel comes up, you're going to have a little preview button. If you have a slow computer, the computer, it won't render the effect until you hit preview. But let's go ahead and hit preview. And okay, what is going on here? That is a total mistake. Now what is happening is we've applied the effect to the stroke. Okay? Now let's go back, hit cancel. Let me see here. Now I need to make sure that I'm applying the effect to the entire path. Okay, so let's go to Effect, Warp, Arc, Preview, and now you can see that all of the entire object is being affected by this warp path. Okay, and you can change it over here. You can move this around to, horizontally where it's being affected and vertically where it's being affected. And this also gives you a bunch of different options as to how you're going to warp your object. Okay, so you can do it in an arc, a bulge in the middle. Let me put this here so you can kind of see bulge or a bulge inward. You can always do the positive and the negative of the effect. Flag is always good. That gives you this little effect. But one thing I want you to realize is these are not permanent effects. Okay, so let's go to OK. And you'll see right here the effect. Once you click OK, the effect is right here, but it's not permanent. If you figure out later something happens and you say, oh, well, I don't like how this was done, I can go back and I can change it again. Or I can even change the effect. Okay. Now, I'm never going to use, a circle like this, so let's use something that we would do in the real world. Let's look at, I'm going to do a quick example of this guy right here, okay? Now, if you look at the Netflix, you might say, okay, how do they do this effect where they have the top is flat and the bottom is curved? Well, I'm pretty sure that they did this by using a similar effect to this. So I'm just going to create a new text object. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to hit Netflix. This is, again, we're just using the Miriam Pro. There's a ton of different fonts that'll kind of be similar to this. It's more or less, it's not perfect, but it works. So I'm just going to, I usually don't like to just drag and transform my text. What I like to do is use the text tool. So I'll just go up to Window, Type, Character, and I'll change the size of everything down here. So we'll make that larger. We'll space out the letters a little better. And this just keeps you from getting into, it keeps you in whole numbers. Okay, so there we go. We'll do it like that. Now, how do we get this little curve on the bottom? Well, if you'll look over here, you'll see that we have this is now saying type, and we have opacity. We can change the opacity. See? We can change a lot of different things. We can go into this stuff later. This is where you can deal with clipping masks and opacity masks and things like that. We're not going to deal with that right now. But what I want to do is see what happens if we're selected on type and we want to go up to Effect, Warp, and we can just click Arc for now, but what's the effect that we need to use if we only want to affect the bottom arc of this? It appears like it would be this guy because the top is flat and the bottom is curved. So let's click on that. Okay, that looks a little bit off, but that's because we're going positive with the blend, okay? With the bin, sorry. So let's do that backwards in this guy. Let's see how that looks. Okay, let's put these at 0. Put everything at if you need to make it 0, you can just select this and do 0. Okay, that's starting to look a little bit more like the logo. It's not perfect, I don't think we even have the right font here, but it gives you an idea of how you can do that. Okay, now let's go to the type tool. Up here, you can see that on the type tool, we now have this warp arc, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and just add a red background. Let's try to make it as close as possible. So we're right here on the, I'm just going to lock that guy. Underneath the Netflix, I'm going to create a red square. So there we go. Going to do the eyedropper and click on that red. And I'm going to take this red and drag it under the Netflix. There we go. Now I'm going to select both of these guys and hit the align tool so they're both, in the middle. And you can actually align everything to the artboard that you're working on. So let's do align to artboard. Okay, and then we're going to center that again. There we go. Okay. Now, of course, Netflix needs to be white. There we go. And you're going to notice something. When I select Netflix here, you're going to see the old Netflix text here. You're not going to see the Netflix with the effect on it. Now, once I have this pretty well done, what I will do is, okay, I want to make, the first thing that I need to do is turn Netflix into a shape. Once you are totally ready and you know that you're done, I'm going to select on this, and like we did before, I'm going to go up to type and do create outlines. So now, as you can see, the Netflix, let's turn off the effect for a second. Now this is just shapes, okay? It's a bunch of shapes together. You can see all the individual letters here, and they're grouped together. And then we have, if you turn on the effect, now you can see the effect. Okay? And if you want to make the effect permanent, like let's say you want to send this off to a client as a finished logo, you don't want to have that effect on it anymore. Okay, you can say, okay, well, I'm going to tweak it a little bit more. Let's tweak it a little more. Let's play with it, okay? And that's it. That's going to be our logo, okay? You don't want to send them a logo that's got the effect, the warp effect. You want to make this actually, the shape look like this guy, okay? So we're going to go up again, go to Object, and Expand Appearance. And now the shape is the shape that we have. That's the final shape. We don't have any effect on that anymore. Okay, if we click on that, you just see the group of letters that are there. Okay? So hopefully that, I know it's kind of complicated, but I think it's important to learn the effects panel as part of the appearance panel. Okay? And, once you have this, you can do other effects to it. I don't really use a lot of these effects, but just to look through them, you can see, let's see, distort, transform. I don't use that. You can twist and tweak and transform. You can do all kinds of things to shapes. I don't ever use these. You can do like a drop shadow. Here's some Photoshop effects that I almost never use. For example, drop shadow. Here you go. Preview. And there's a little drop shadow. You can, I don't like to have raster kind of effects like this in Illustrator. So I would do 0 blur on this guy. And let's see, opacity 100. And let's see how that looks. And that looks a little bit more like this. This is actually a little more complicated. It's a stroke with a 3D effect. And we can do that. It's pretty easy to redo that. So, okay. And now we have that drop shadow. If you want to, we can do the same thing that we did before and make that part of the logo too and make this a vector cutout. So let's go up to Object, Expand Appearance. And now we've got this as our logo. We've got this shadow is actually, if we double click on that, we'll go inside of that and you can see that we have this black logo now behind it. And you can double click on the Netflix group that's together now, and you can also, inside of that embedded object, you can see that we're now inside of that group. You can add a stroke, a black stroke to that, make it bigger. And I just want you to realize how deep this goes. It's really, amazing how many levels there are. Now, this obviously doesn't look like the logo, but it just, the idea is to give you a feel for how it all works.